Hi everyone, welcome to day 4 of Pop Artists. I'm so glad that you could join me. Today our artist is Romero Britto. Yes, Romero Britto. Romero Britto is from Brazil originally, and he came from a very large family. He had about 12 kids in his family. When he started to do art, he was around 8 years old. And like most of us, when you're a kid around 8 years old, you don't have a lot of money. So he didn't have a lot of money to buy art supplies. So what he would do is find things like newspaper, cardboard, and any type of paint. Sometimes he didn't even have enough money for brushes, so he would finger paint. He just loved to paint so much. And when he turned 25, he came to Miami, and that's in Florida. And he just loved doing art so much. When he first started out, he would do art in the streets. He would draw on sidewalks. He would do art for people. And eventually he was able to move into a small studio. He is greatly inspired by a couple different artists. We have the king of pop art, Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol truly is inspirational to a lot of people. And when Romero moved to Miami, pop art was super popular. Remember, pop art is fun, it's light, it's colorful, and it's usually everyday objects. So what we can see here is Andy Warhol, the guy with the crazy hair, and he has his Campbell soup cans, and of course he does bright prints. The other person that inspired Romero was also Pablo Picasso. Now, Picasso was really a big player in art movements. He helped develop the Cubist movement, which took away from representation. Representation is where something looks like something. Like behind me, I have my book, Journey the Brave. It looks like a giraffe, but if you can see, Cubism breaks up the shapes. It takes and shows different angles. So it would be like if you took a picture of me and you saw me with my face at the front, me with my face at the side, and me from the back, all at once. Cubism just mixes everything up. And eventually, it really broke down shapes to the point you couldn't really even tell what it was necessarily unless it said in the title. So he was really inspired by that. So if we look at Romero Britto's art, you can start seeing how he breaks up his art too with a thick black line. You can see like Andy Warhol, he used bright colors. And what it reminds me of is like a stained glass window. You can see the thick black lines, and each space becomes its own area of design. So we can see different patterns. Now, he doesn't use too many colors in each of his squares, so that's something to keep in mind. So we have this right here. It has orange and kind of a pinky, purpley, reddish color. We see yellow and orange, and he layers these different patterns and brings them all together. We have sculptures. This might look familiar. It's very similar to the painting he did. So he just wants art for everyone, and that's really the heart of the pop art movement. So he has art in train stations. He has them in public places. He partners with different people. This might look familiar if you've ever seen Alice in Wonderland, and he takes characters and he puts his own artwork on it. So he definitely gets around. So you can see a lot of different patterning. I love the polka dots, can I just say. He has a loose style. So his dog, it's just so adorable. And then you can see the patterns in the background. So almost anything goes. And just to honor his favorite, one of his favorite artists, Andy Warhol, who's known for Campbell soup cans, Romero Britto also has his own Campbell soup can with his own style. Way to go, Romero. So we are going to make our own Romero Britto picture. Let's get started. Okay, so some of the materials that we will need for today's class, we will need paper. Now this is a nice thick cardstock. I would use something that fits for the materials you're using. So this cardstock is great, watercolor paper is great, anything like that. We do want a thicker paper because we will be using Sharpie, and if it's a thin paper like printer paper, it does leak through sometimes. So we'll want to keep that in mind. So thick paper, Sharpie, pencil with an eraser. We're going to draw with our pencil first, and then you'll need something to color with. So you can use colored pencils, you can use markers, or you can even use like oil pastels, or I also have slick sticks. I love slick sticks. They're made by Crayola. They're fantastic. So let's go ahead and get started. So one of the things that we notice with Mr. Britto's artwork is that he uses a lot of patterns. He also uses a lot of symbols. And you may say, what's a symbol, Miss Crystal? Symbols are things that represent something. So when I look at this heart, I know that represents love. This right here is a star. Does this actually look like the real star in the sky? No, it doesn't. It doesn't look like a ball of fire, right? So it's a symbol that represents something. So I want you to think of something that represents you. Who are you? What do you love? What are you all about? Me, I am an artist all the way. So I might start out by drawing some sort of art tool. I think I'm going to do a paint palette. So I'm going to draw a traditional style paint palette. It's kind of like an oval shape and usually has a little dip in it, has a little hole in it for your thumb to go through. And then I can put some other little spots here. This is what's going to hold my paint. So I'm just sketching it out first. Now, the nice thing about using a pencil is you can erase. So if I need to change the size, I can totally do that. If I feel like I made a mistake, I can also adjust that as well. The next thing, once I have my paint palette, I probably want to add some paint in here too. Maybe have some mixing. I can have some of my favorite colors. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. I might even want to add a little dimension to it. So I'm just going to add a little edge here, maybe on the inside here as well. So I'm drawing my symbol. You draw whatever symbol represents you. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is break up my space. Now, I can do what he did with this Campbell soup and draw radial lines, which is kind of like the sunshine lines that we drew even as little tiny kids, or we can break it up even more. Remember, this is kind of inspired by Cubism. So we see all sorts of lines going on, going different directions, breaking up the space. This is a good example right here. It's also got radial lines. Sometimes he makes it more like a landscape. So when I break up my space, I can really choose what I want it to look like. So I think I'm gonna put a line here. And if you need to use a ruler, please feel free to. I'm gonna put a line here. I'm gonna put a line here, because I really want it to seem like maybe a little random, maybe not too purposeful. Sometimes it's easier to turn a picture over to really get the space that you want. Okay, so that right there is a good start. Once I have my sketch, I want to take my Sharpie, or if you have an even bigger Sharpie, you can use that too. So I'm just gonna do, remember his stuff is like that stained glass window we talked about. It has those thick lines that divide up our areas. If my Sharpie isn't thick enough, I can always go back in and do an even thicker line just by tracing next to it. Feels like there's something bumpy underneath. That's okay, we'll work through it. Ooh, I'm liking my lines already. I'm gonna put some paint here. Now you may notice I'm not tracing every line. I want some of the lines to kind of disappear. So I will be erasing after I trace my lines. Maybe I want to make some of the lines thicker. I can totally do that. Ooh, I'm liking these thick lines. You can make all sorts of patterns within your shapes. One thing that Romero does, I might even make this longer. Well, I'll make a real funky shape. Yeah. One thing that Romero does is he adds his own name into the patterns. So this is his name, his signature Britto, and he adds it in there. So if you want to make a pattern out of maybe your initials or something like that, you can totally do that. It becomes really fun and it looks pretty cool. Okay, so once I've done my Sharpie, I like how it looks. I can always come in here and erase my pencil lines. Now it's time for coloring. And for coloring, as I said, you can use whatever materials you want, but you want it bright, you want it colorful. So one thing you can do, let's say I want, now my yellows always are the first things to run out. So let's say I want a yellow background. Maybe I want to color it first. Because if you look at this, he has two colors here, but it might be hard to color around my shapes. And since yellow is bright, I know I can draw over the top of it. So maybe I want to do my own initial. Ooh, I love purple. Let's see what that does. So I'm going to do C and P. Those are my initials, and I can just repeat them. And after a while, it can become like a pattern. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. I'm going to keep working on my patterns. I can draw them in Sharpie first if I want to. I'm kind of liking this pattern right here of the stripes, and I can continue that. And then I could even put other patterns in here. I like his polka dots that he uses, so I might draw some polka dots and just keep my colors bright and happy, because Romero's art is all about having joy. He understands that as a person, we can't be joyful all the time. We have a wide variety of emotions, but what's better than putting a smile on someone's face and having a nice, colorful picture? I hope you enjoyed this and that I look forward to seeing your pictures. Bye, guys.